So, oh, sorry about that. So yeah, that always kind of warms my heart because I was sitting on my couch and I saw that. And that really set me off on this path. It's kind of crazy to see where things have gone in the past 8 years. And I think the next critical piece was really deciding to go to the first meetup. And you know, I live in Jersey, so it was a 2 hour trek to get into the city, and it was like, what the hell am I doing? But at the time, you know, I had spent 6 months reading every forum and building my own computer and buying everything I possibly could. And I was like, well, I've done this much. I gotta go in. So that's kind of my origin story. Again, this is a little bit of repeat of what I said before, but I'm co-founder and chief creative officer of the Glimpse Group. As chief creative officer, I basically oversee all the content that's happening. Oops, thank you. I oversee all of the content that's being created in the company. I oversee the QA division, so we're constantly reviewing and citing bugs. And then I do a lot of sales outreach just because I'm kind of known within the industry. Yeah, various other kind of executive types of stuff. I still run the meetup, still very obsessed with VR technology. You know, I'm a fan of AR technology, but my passion and my heart is actually on the VR side of things. I actually think that AR will probably be the one that's a little more mass adopted and easier for people to get their hands around. But VR just feels like much more of a superpower. You know, I was thinking about a way to frame it, and it's kind of like AR is like Batman and VR is Superman. I don't know if that like offends people, but I was thinking that was a good analogy. So that's me. This is the meetup. So this was our first meetup with in that dusty conference room, and this was last year. So we tended to fill out the spaces that we would hold events at, and I'm anxious to get back to what we were doing. This is some company information. So this is 30 of the 50 at our last holiday party. So it's kind of a unique company. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but basically the company acts like a holding company, and we've acquired AR and VR startups in different industries, so different verticals. Those startups come on board with stock in the parent company. So they're incentivized to basically help each other. We, as the executive team, we raise money at the top level. We give full creative control to our subsidiary entities. And the only thing that we ultimately control is resources. So the entrepreneurs have a budget, they have health benefits, they have a salary, and then they have a percentage ownership in their entity upon exit. So our mission statement is to essentially grow our entities, exit them off, and at that time, you know, everyone within the organization actually benefits. It's really designed on twofold. So from the entrepreneur side, I think being a typical entrepreneur in any industry is just a hard task because you have to know the technology, you have to know the business, and you have to raise money. And there's only so many hours in the day. And in our model, we really, depending on what the entrepreneur is good at, we can allow them to really focus on what they're good at. So if they're a technology entrepreneur, they lead the tech. If they're a business, they lead the business. If they're good at raising money, well, actually, we haven't really found any entrepreneurs that are good at raising money. That's kind of coming from the top level at this point. But that is the trickiest, I think, of skill sets. But from the investor side, we actually, because we have 9 startups under our umbrella, we're inherently a portfolio play. So as COVID hit, essentially some of our divisions got a little slow and some of our divisions heated up, and we can move resources internally to help balance the load across the entire organization. So I'm super stoked where Glimpse has grown to be. We were pretty close to being cash flow positive pre-COVID. Um, Last few months, like March, April, May, were really disastrous for in terms of new bookings. But since then, we're really ton of outreach, and we're getting back to where we were prior uh, to COVID. So that's a little bit on the company. I don't want to keep on talking, so I'm happy to answer any questions on the meetup or the company or industry if anyone has anything.
I'm sure people are happy to keep hearing you talking.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Hey,
And
I had a quick question.
yeah, please.
Oh yeah, I mean it's great that you're kind of giving us the breakdown on um, the business model, but and I was curious, like how do you go about finding the investors and the right investors? Are you looking for the right one? And also, um, basically, what's your process for raising the money from the investor? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. So definitely legit question. And we definitely will get to the Broadway XR piece of it, but I'm happy to answer your questions on this stuff. So we're really unique, and it's a little bit of a challenge for us in that we are a portfolio of startups. And the typical startup path is venture capitalists, right? So venture capitalists would normally be the first stopping point for a startup, but because we're a portfolio, we don't fit within their profile. So most venture capitalists that run across our path, they're like, wow, this is super cool. So excited to see what you're doing. But there's a huge but. It's like, but I can't take this to my company and say, I found a startup that I'm really excited about, because we're not really a startup. We're a holding company or a platform company of 9 different startups. And we're actually taking the job of picking out the VC's portfolio for them. So for that reason, we actually haven't made any traction with venture capitalist investment. Fortunately, we have a great network. We have a ton of investors, and they're mainly on the high net worth family office type of individuals that are excited about the industry, and are connected in somehow to our board members, our exec team, and other investors that have come on board. So I think we have up to 70 or 80 investors right now, that have fueled us until now. And to date, I believe we're at 6.5 million or so raised to date, which sounds like a good number, but when you got 50 full-time employees, that doesn't get you very far. So a huge focus of our company is basically getting revenue day one, or at least day 3, on the stuff that we do, so that the money comes in, can fuel the expansion of the entities. And out of our entities, the folks that get the gigs tend to get the more resources to continue on their path. And it's all open book across the whole organization. So, if one sub is like, well, how come I didn't get a developer this month, and that person did? It's like, here's the books, here's the revenue that they brought in, and they all have stock in the parent company. So if one of them succeeds, they're still going to get a check. So they're actually motivated to help each other, and that is like the biggest unifying thing about the organization.
Very cool. And we'll get to investment questions later, I think, at the end.
Sure.
So let's
I'll keep. Yeah. So I'll dig in. So this is a little bit of the philosophical conversation about AR and VR and immersive technology. If you've gone to other VR events, you've probably seen a similar chart that VR and AR is the next medium of communication. I think my little spin on this, and it's really the reason I jumped into this, is that we are migrating from two-dimensional content to three-dimensional content. So when I find like 100% truths in my life, I like latch onto them, like with fangs. And early on, I really saw VR as a way to finally consume 3D content easily. And inherently, my belief is that we as a species can understand three-dimensional content better than two-dimensional content. And I have a lot of passion for VR, and that passion allowed me to buy the toys and read all the articles. But the 1 + 1 = 2, and the ability for me to take a leap of faith away from a 20-year profession really boiled down to 3D content is better than 2D content. So a lot of people ask me, how is the industry doing? And especially because I'm on the front line, I think I have a pretty unique perspective. So some of you guys might have seen this. This is the Gartner hype curve, which kind of drives me nuts, but it's meant to explain the path of emerging technologies, how there's all this hype, and then there's this trough, and then you get over to the plateau of productivity where it's being adopted. Back in 2018, VR was already off the chart, and AR was in the trough, and now you can't even find these technologies on the chart because I think we're just, they got sick of showing them. And then you look at the ever slipping exponential curve, right? These same exact curves year over year over year, and each year it just keeps on getting pushed out and out and out. My perspective on this is really a little bit unique, and it goes back to my thoughts on, I don't really like rules in general. So my industry curve is actually a straight line. And this is how I've seen and felt and lived in this industry since I saw that first video. And this is really based on these things, the progression of the hardware, the adoption, what is being said in social media, what's being said in the news, the level of community events, what kind of startups, and actually this one is most important for me. It's what are my kids seeing? And for 7 years, my kids never had a friend that actually even had access to it, right? Maybe they had a cardboard or they kind of understood it. But in the last year with the Oculus Quest, finally, their friend, a couple of friends have headsets, and they have the ability to actually go in VR with their friends. Now, that said, they're still sitting on the couch playing Fortnite or doing house party or whatever. Their first move is not to a VR headset yet. And I think that it's just still very, very early, and it's still going to take a lot more time. So what are the driving factors in my mind? Number one is hardware improvements. So for a long time, it was HTC Vive plus a PC, $2,000 or more. And that was, in my mind, to really experience real VR. So I never, I walked around with a Samsung Gear VR in my backpack for years, and I loved the fact that I could give a person a glimpse of it. But in my mind, it was never a sustainable solution, and it was inherently not comfortable without 6 degrees of freedom. the Oculus Quest was a huge shift or pivot within the industry. It came in a box that looks like an Apple product. I didn't have to, screw sensors up into my walls. But that said, it's still not an Apple product. There's still a long ways to go in terms of ergonomics, in terms of content. But at least it's finally a scalable, viable product. Then the next thing is, I think what'll be key is the social platforms that grow out of Oculus Quest and other tetherless solutions, because that's what's going to drive this, is when my son can play games with his friends in an experience. I think Half-Life Alyx is probably my top VR experience right now, and I don't know if anyone else has even seen that. I know Steven's seen it, but it is on many levels a work of art. It's just an amazing single player experience. But the cost to develop it versus the actual audience that's around to actually consume it, you just have to thank Valve for doing what they did to open the eyes of developers of what can actually be done in a VR experience. And that aside, the things that will hit, I think, outside of something like Half-Life Alyx, which I don't think really business-wise makes a ton of sense, is these consumer platforms where people can spend time with each other playing fun games. So I'm a Facebook Horizon beta user, so I'm fortunate to actually spend some time in that, and I would say that is it's a good improvement over the other platforms that I've seen in some capacity. It's definitely comfortable. Audio design is amazing. UI is good. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And, I know a lot of people have trouble with Facebook in general, but I'm like, you know what? They got me a headset for $400, and they're building this ecosystem. And I've succumbed to the fact that they're going to give me ads based on the knowledge that they have of how I spend my personal time. I never wrote a check to Facebook except for hardware, right? I use their software, and I pick and choose, and I look at those ads, 10 minutes after I'm talking about something, and I'm like, oh man, that sucks. But it doesn't force me to actually buy the ad from them. So I think you got to take your good things with bad things, and I'm just appreciative that they have really advanced the technology to where it is today. And I hope their competitors learn from what they've done, specifically with their hardware, and can compete with them in the near term. All right, let me keep on going here. So other drivers to the industry. So I think enterprise solutions will be huge. Just took a couple snapshots of some of the products that we actually do. So healthcare is definitely very strong right now. One of the things we do is support groups. And I think this is kind of a telling or a good lesson to learn about VR enterprise, is that you have to pick use cases that are conducive to the technology. And support groups, especially right now, are very tough to go sit around with other people. And one of the downsides of being in a multi-user enterprise experience is that you pretty much have to be this avatar in a shape and form that is unlike your real self. And I think organizations, they don't want to see a silly cartoon. It's a big blocking. But for a support group, you naturally kind of want a mask over your face in certain cases. You're able to actually open up and talk about certain things in a little bit better way. So it takes a con and makes it a pro. Learning through so corporate training, learning through experience, that's like a no-brainer. Low-hanging fruit. Again, you have to pick and choose which lessons make sense for VR. And then we're doing a ton of work with education, universities in particular, remote classroom types of stuff, similar to corporate training, learn through experience. Do you really want to learn about Shakespeare while sitting in a classroom, or do you want to be transported to the Shakespearean theater? And that's a project we just actually did with Sacred Heart. And then the last one is data visualization, which, seeing data in an immersive environment is super cool. Idea of a multi-monitor environment. And we're talking to the financials like E-Trades of kind of the future of how we can bring their business into 3 dimensions. Then on the entertainment side, so we'll talk now a little bit more about the topic of the evening. So we've explored this a bunch, but to tell you the truth, especially on the VR side, we haven't really been able to take off with anything. And it's driven by hardware accessibility and scalability. It's just the folks that have the headsets, there's not enough of them. And the folks that do have headsets, they don't have the headsets with the thought of going to see a concert or any type of traditional entertainment. They have those headsets to play games. So I'll quickly show you, I think that there's a huge potential here, and this is a little prototype. We're talking with a bunch of different entertainment types of folks, ranging from musical bands to comedy clubs, to actually religious services. And this is a pretty unique tool where we can live broadcast in video footage from a camera, immersive camera, into a multi-user space. So I really haven't seen something like this out in the masses. I would say like Oculus Venues had a Post Malone concert where they set a camera up and it viewed it as if you were in the stadium. What we're doing is after the show, you can actually meet with the band in like a green room type of thing where you're sitting across from them. And I think that's a much better use of VR is this intimate type of setting. And then across Oculus Venues, they had those 2, it was Billie Eilish and Post Malone, where they actually used a 180-degree camera or an immersive camera to even try and make you feel like you were there. And then this whole COVID area time, they've been taking just iHeartRadio YouTube footage from like Katy Perry, and basically the same feed and the same cuts that they were sending to YouTube, they were just putting it on a screen in VR. And I was like, what a waste. Like, and I just don't understand why they're not using the medium for how it should be used.
Well, let me jump in.
Yeah.
The question on that is, how do you think it should be used? You've had the actual experience making stuff.
Yeah. No, I think how it should be used is intimate settings. One of the first things that went out was a Paul McCartney concert, and it was done by what the hell is the name of the company? They went out of business. Anyway, one of the first big name concerts, they literally put the 360 camera on the piano of Paul McCartney's concert, and of course I tried it, and I put this headset on, and I felt like I was like a mouse sitting on the piano during the concert. And I'm like, what the hell are they thinking? Like, why do that, right? So my whole idea is make it feel like you're there, and make it an intimate setting. So I don't need to be in VR to be in nosebleed seats in a stadium to watch a show, or even 50-yard line things. I want to be in Post Malone's living room and have him play an acoustic set for me, or whoever it is, right? And that's easily done. And then our technology is live broadcast, and the band has a flat panel that looks into the VR world, so you can actually have a conversation back and forth. Now I can, maybe Post Malone can't talk with 30,000 people, but maybe they sell, special VIP passes, and now you get to sit with Post Malone for 5 minutes after the pre-recorded concert. And Post Malone doesn't have to go anywhere. He just, wherever he's at, he puts the camera up, and now he literally, for that super fan, he feels like he's sitting right across the table from him. So that's what I want, and that's what I'm astonished that people aren't doing yet.
That's exciting. I can't hardly, do I have to wait longer to jump in, or can I say something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love where your head's at. I agree with you fully. I've been thinking about that because at TechWorks, I've been talking about CEOs and how they could mentor, entrepreneurs, where there's a lot of awkward safety feeling. Like when you don't know the person and the way the world feels now, there's a lot of tension just, in general. So I think like what you're saying is it's such an opportunity to bring powerful people, influential people close to, folks they would never feel quite comfortable with in their living room in the same kind of way. And I do think the power is something that's untapped, and it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for more intimate engagement and interaction. So I totally agree. And I think you're on the right track for sure with that. And I would love to be involved in, so you're talking about the entertainment aspect. I also think that whether that's mentorship or coaching or any way that, more human connection, where the gap between the powerful and the unknown, we could bridge that gap. I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah. So the corporate training division is using this same technology for coaching life skills. So we're using similar technology across the entire organization in different use cases and in different verticals, which is also really, really cool. So, one person figures out something, we can leverage it in different verticals. Okay, so let me keep on going. So, one thing that I am excited about is that I see these little examples of immersive content being shoved into these non-AR, VR at heart platforms. So Fortnite, of course, is Epic Games. It's Unreal. You know that VR is on their mind. And Fortnite, I think, is really the first true metaverse, right? That the amount of time that is spent in general humanity in that dimensional world is amazing. And the little concerts that they are putting on within that platform are the largest virtual events that are actually happening. So I'm really, really excited to see examples of this. And I don't know if anybody else has seen the replayed footage of these events, but this is VR content. Like this, they flip a switch and I can be there in my Vive, which I just think is outstanding. And it's very clear to me that is within their roadmap of what's down the road. But then you also see other social media platforms like TikTok doing the same thing, right? So animated avatars, the TikTok performance. This was the weekend. It was choose your own adventure style, so it's interactive. All of these elements are in my mind, they're kind of AR and VR owned, but they're being put into these existing platforms, and they're being wildly successful, which I just think is super cool, and will continue to help advance the technology. And now these performers, these are the biggest performers in the world. Every other big performer is looking at these guys and like, oh, how do I explore this? And what's next down the road? And what's next is AR and VR. So I am really, really excited to see those examples pop up. Now, specific to Broadway, I have a couple of things here, and theater in general. So I think, you know, in New York City, there's a show called Sleep No More, and I think this is the godfather or the original gangster of immersive theater, where you basically go into a hotel, and there is a show that's continually playing, and you as the participant can walk around anywhere you want. You can follow any character, and it's a self-guided show. It's kind of like a Broadway show that's a video game, and it's hugely popular. It's now franchised out, and I think that this is an amazing template for the VR industry to think about what the future of Broadway theater could be in a virtual setting. The next example, and I have some clips here, but I won't go into the video clips, but right now there's a piece on the Oculus Quest. It's called The Under. And this is one of the first VR pieces that actually has live actors attached to it. So there's a showtime, and it's an artistic piece. You can, if you have a Quest, you can download the free version and you get like a little automated tour, so you can understand what the aesthetics kind of look like. But then there's showtimes, and each showtime consists of basically 8 participants. You don't necessarily know who you're going to experience this show with. And then they have actors on staff that log in, and it's an interactive thing where you are in this virtual set with actors and you are living this story. I think that there's kind of some mixed reviews about it, but I am definitely excited about the fact that they're even doing this. And what's great is that the system, the Oculus platform allows it to happen. So they have in-app purchase to buy the tickets to actually go to the event. And that's no small feat. You know, this isn't a one-time purchase of a piece of software like every other Oculus Quest store. This is an in-app purchase within their platform. So, so again, kudos to Oculus and Facebook for making this even a viable solution, and really experimenting with what immersive theater could be in VR. Next thing we could probably talk about for a long time. I know I've spent a bunch of time talking about this concept or argument over linear versus nonlinear storytelling in virtual reality. Just to kind of give the definitions, a linear storytelling piece is basically all media that we've had up till date, minus a choose your own adventure book, right? So you are a passive consumer of the content. There is a director that wants you to consume the story in a certain way. And there's a whole art form built around framing shots and cutting scenes, and for that reason, I don't think that art form will never go away, just like writing books will never go away. Like I love movies, and to see a movie framed in a certain way by a director is a wonderful art. VR turns that upside down because you don't have control of the frame. So Invasion is kind of the big example that everyone uses to explain how a linear story can be told in virtual reality. So if you haven't seen it, go download it. It's free, and it's done by a company, a studio called Baobab. And the way that they basically did it is that they put so much emphasis on the focal point of the content. And they used a ton of tricks. They used audio cues. They had people pointing. And most importantly, because I actually had them present at one of my meetups and got all the download, tons of user testing, like hundreds and hundreds of user testing, to make sure that people followed the right path, that they were following the right character and they didn't miss the critical elements of the story. Because if you are in a murder mystery and the person behind you shoots the gun and you don't see that happen, that whole story is going to fall apart. And that is a huge dilemma for linear storytelling within virtual reality. A really unique concept is the invisible hours, and I would also check this one out. So this is like a mystery theater where this story progresses and people will get shot whether you are or not in that room. But the way that the mechanism that they made it viable is that you have a magic watch and you can turn back time. So you can basically follow each one of these characters through this entire storyline, and only by going through and watching everything that has happened can you actually get a full grasp of the entire experience. So I'm
going to jump in and say also for this one is it's not simply one scene where you're jumping forward and back. There's things happening all over this house, all in different areas. So you have to look at the timestamps of, let's say it's midnight, and you have to go to 3 different places at midnight to see what's happening at the same time. So there's multiple threads going on at the same time.
Yep. So I think that's super cool. And then I think the third piece of this is a true interactive game like Half-Life Alyx, right? Where you are leading through this storyline, and there is a storyline. What resonates the most? What becomes the art form within VR, like defaulto art form? I actually don't really know yet, and I think that there'll be genres of all types of experiences across the board. But I will say I'm not as much of a fan of the linear story in VR, because it just feels like you're not taking advantage of all the superpowers of what VR is. But that's that one I'm a little undecided on. So in terms of actual Broadway and what's actually happening, AR and VR, really it's projection mapping is kind of the key thing that's happening right now, pre-COVID. I think that VR, definitely VR in a theater just doesn't make any sense. Maybe at some point these shows will be broadcasting to VR headsets, similar to the Post Malone concert. Not quite there yet. On AR, I think that it'll grow in the marketing aspects. There'll be AR assets. There might be AR clips that people can consume. But in terms of immersive content, I think projection mapping will rule the roost for a long time, and it's already happening. And as AR and VR technology improves, those projection mapping tools will also really improve. So this is a Frozen. They basically, it's core to their whole show. And then this is something that actually Oculus put together. They took over a theater. It's really, really awesome, actually. Maybe later I'll bring up the clip so that you guys can take a look at it. Or if you just Google Oculus Quest Cinema Takeover, you can take a look at it. It's really, really sweet. And then the kind of final thing that's happening in New York City Broadway is they're like technology pop-ups. They're immersive theaters with projection mapping and augmented reality like Kinect cameras where you can draw on walls. And these were they were popping up all over the place pre-COVID. So just another example of our technology getting brought in and being displayed for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, DJ, one of the questions that I was asked in a breakout group for your one was, or they asked is, could we have glasses on and have like AI actors or avatars or other things? So something like if you had cats where they're in the audience, well, guess what? They really want the cats to be there the whole time doing something with you. Technology is not there for that yet, but what the theater professionals I saw want to do is take the theater that as it exists now and add on to it with like in your seat, in your area, things going on in addition to whatever's on the stage to enhance the stage.
Yeah, and I think that it won't be mass Broadway for a long, long time because those headsets are not, the 3D glasses that you throw in the bin at the end of the movie theater, right?
Yeah.
So I can easily see like a boutique off Broadway, small theater type of thing where, the technology is the core of the show. And I think that, listen, AR headsets, they're frankly not out there at all, right? Like, in my mind, $3,000 for a HoloLens or a Magic Leap, whatever. They're not viable solutions quite yet. I am really excited. I did get to see the Q-Real AR glasses before COVID hit, $500, and they were sweet. They are small form factor. There's a little bit of drift, but I was really impressed, and way different experience just even putting these things on than a HoloLens. And listen, at the end of the day, we are all just waiting in the wings for what Apple does. So, and maybe, maybe Facebook will come out and surprise us with something, or somebody else, who knows. I've been saying, Apple probably since 2014, that'll be 2 to 4 years, 2 to 3 years. Finally, I'm at, maybe it's 1 to 2 years now. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I personally don't think the technology for AR is there yet. Even when they come out, even when Apple does what it's going to do, it'll probably be something cool, but not what we're talking about here, where you could be in a theater with assets all over the place. I mean, that takes a lot of power.
Yeah. I think projection mapping though is pretty sweet, and you can get some really cool effects if you're creative enough. And there's no hurdles to consumption. That's the huge key. So that's really it. I just have like my final reminders is the power of VR is education and social communication. What I said before. I said that for a long time, and I added a third superpower recently. And it's not, I don't think anybody else really has said this that I've seen so much, but I think humanity in general is really struggling with the pace of everything that we do. Definitely things have slowed down, and which I'm very thankful for in a lot of respects. But VR has a super unique power to provide focus to whatever somebody is doing. And I think that more people should, number one, acknowledge that potential, and then leverage it in the content that they create. That's it. And if you snap this little QR code, it actually goes to my LinkedIn. I figured that out.
Nice. So let's open it up to questions now. We've had a few people that are on mute that haven't been able to participate. Anybody have any questions for DJ to start with?
Yeah, sure. I have a question. So how do you sell all of this? Like, how do you find new clients? Because like I was trying to sell VR around here. Like people, honestly, they don't really care about the technology at all. Like they have their own problems and needs, and like when I try to give them or show them the possible value, they say, oh no 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 no, I don't need that. So like how, on your experience, how do you approach this, and what do you do? If it's not a secret, of course.
Yeah, it's there is no easy answer to sales of an emerging technology that's early. I would say that our sales cycle is very, very, very long. It involves a ton of education as part of the sales cycle, um, especially on the VR side of things. And we have, we're fortunate. We're a big entity. So the companies, the larger companies that are looking to explore this technology, we're a good option for them. We're not a small development shop that may not be around in the next few months. So larger organizations, our scale is a big advantage in saying, okay, this company is going to be around, and our offering, the amount of technology under the hood. It's one thing for a company to be interested in one solution, but they don't want to deal with 10 different developers who have 10 different solutions across the AR and VR space. They much more prefer a single source entity that has a bunch of technologies under the hood. So I'm just saying, our advantages and what has gotten us here is scalability, and because we're large, we're kind of well known. And I like to think we have cool technology and an amazing team. But yeah, it's don't expect a quick sale. That's number one.
Okay, I got you. Thanks so much.
I've got a question for you, DJ. Just from your experience. So, like when the internet first blew up, people spent more time on two things than any other. And those two things were watching the stock market, buying stocks, and pornography, right? Those are the two things that really kind of got people into the internet, because they provided a way for people to do something in a more private way. Is there a market or an industry that is analogous in VR? I mean, maybe it's the same ones, I don't know. But just wondering, like, your experience, what have you seen, and what do you think those initial uses are going to be?
Yeah, sure. So I think, well, the adult industry in general, it wasn't just the internet, right? That has driven technologies, various technologies, from VCR tapes to credit cards to just across the board. That's a huge driver. And we at Glimpse, our roadmap is to eventually become a publicly traded company. So we've kind of consciously decided not to go into that one sector. I think that one sector will have a similar impact as time advances, and again, the technology and hardware has to get better. But I think that will be a thing. The other side of this goes back to the two superpowers of the technology in my mind, which is education and social, bringing people together. So I think those are what this technology does best on the VR side of things. AR is a different animal. We're seeing a ton of immediate success in the marketing, social media, Snapchat filters. We're Snapchat partner, Instagram partner. So AR is infusing itself into that world, and we're a provider, which has actually been a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, I might jump in. So I loved what you said. You said several things that were really exciting, and thank you for everything that you contributed. One about helping focus in the virtual reality experience. And so just to recap, you said VR is Superman, right? And AR is Batman. And I'm a big believer too. You know, I think that I would love to see technology help focus and bring some positive things, you know, that are lacking in the world right now. Like you said, the pace of things. So I wanted to know about that with, have you seen anything, are you working on anything that you've seen that impact of achieving more focus yet? Something that kind of stands out to you that your company's worked on?
Yeah, so, well, this is another rabbit hole that I could go into. But I would say about 2 years, I got really, really excited about the idea of wellness and meditation in VR. And we created some breathing applications, virtual beach type of content. Then I went down even deeper into this rabbit hole of flow state. I don't know if anyone's looked into flow state and the rise of Superman, and actually had the author in my office. And so the basic idea is that, you know, meditation can get you calm. Maybe we can create a VR experience that puts a senior VP into a flow state, and then they could be 200 times more effective in their workday. And we started exploring it. We created a VR Tai Chi prototype, and we've made a breathing exercise. We launched it into a couple firms in their conference room where people would take a break. And we went into a hospital. So stressed out nurses on a cancer floor would go in and take a break. But you know, the meditation content didn't quite resonate across the board. And to be frank, the nurses and the attorneys and everything, they wanted to play Beat Saber. And we were like,
Right.
we were like, I can't really blame you. So I, you know, we kind of put it on ice a little bit, and our healthcare division got a ton of traction in clinical training, and we just kind of stepped away from it a little bit. I think that there's something there. And digging into even me on the personal side, I still really can't meditate. It doesn't resonate with me, but what I've really found out is that the things that I do are my form of meditation. And I play guitar, and I have a sailboat. And those are those things where I become focused on what I'm doing, and I draw and paint, right? So those three kind of art forms are my meditation. And the things that I like to do in VR are the creative stuff. So I sculpt, I tilt brush, I gravity sketch. So I like to draw things. I think that to answer your question, I think that there's a huge opportunity there, but it also has to come with the desire from the user base to put up with putting this thing on their face, and I think the mindset of the people that are typically open to meditation, it's hard enough to get them to do it just sitting there with their eyes closed. Now you're basically connecting wires to them and sitting them with this heavy electronic thing on their face. I just think it's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm. And I did want to share one thing about you said when your kids could play compete. So I tried Echo VR, which is an incredible experience. And I did compete against a friend in there. We met, you know, flew around the lobby and all that stuff. So Echo VR for me was pretty mind blowing. And then 11 table tennis, we meet up in there and play ping pong every now and then. So those are actually, I'm starting to realize what you're saying. It's really fun. And I feel like I hang out with this guy, and he lives, you know, like 3 hours away. And we'll hop in there and, you know, spend time together. So that's really cool. And one question I had about the Epic concerts, they export the file now and you can go walk through it in VR. Is that what you were saying? Like after it's done?
No, you can't. But the
okay.
content, it's Epic, right? It's Unreal Engine. So it's inherently built to be in VR eventually. And
okay.
You know, even the particles that they're all the same stuff that my team uses to create our Unreal experiences. So, you physically can't do that now, but it's very clear to me that you will be able to.
Yeah, I would love that. You know, like the Travis Scott experience. I was going to ask you if that was available somewhere to kind of like side quest that in there or something. I was going to do it, but yeah.
No.
Okay.
We are partners with Unreal though, so I can ask my my guy if they have a
Thank
build.
you. Yeah, and, you know, and I'm in North Carolina, so I've been trying to, you know, show my allegiance to that company. I'm a fan of Unreal. I hope that they keep growing as a tech company because I think it's great for, you know, New York companies to be tech companies. In North Carolina, they shouldn't all be in Silicon Valley. So, you know, I'm hoping we can spread them across the country. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see with their new Unreal 5, like the clips of that, and it's, you know, the problem is that on the enterprise side of things, it's just much easier to create content in Unity. The ecosystem, like you just in Unreal, you just tend to hit brick walls where you don't have a resource to turn to, and the interactions, you know, there's Unity has a plugin for everything, and Unreal, there's not as much of a community, and even within the community, they're more tight-lipped about what they're doing. It's more competitive edge. At least that's kind of the gut feeling I have, is that it's a smaller community, and that community is a little bit more tight-lipped about what they're doing within the medium. Whereas Unity, it's more widespread, and you're much more able to find resources, or, you know, some student that put together an interaction that you can learn from and get past. It's just the visuals are just not the same.
Hey, DJ.
Yeah.
So you guys primarily work with B2B sector, is that right?
Yeah.
So do you guys notice any sort of pushback with customers when it comes to virtual reality, like having to put the headset on, if that's a concern or anything like that, or they're pretty open about the content and wanting to adapt and things like that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that's part of the selling process, right? And you have to pick the clients that have the right use case, that understand that their users are going to be willing to actually do this. Right now, you know, obviously there's a huge shift because of COVID, and pre-COVID, or actually probably a year or two ago, most of our projects were kind of pilot projects where we'd be throwing a Vive into a conference room, and, you know, the office would be using it. Now we've graduated to deployments of 50 to 150 headsets into an organization, and they're being deployed to, you know, a student class or a department or whatever it is. And hygiene issue isn't an issue because they're basically being handed to an individual, and they own it for the duration of that deployment. That said, one huge thing that we're struggling with is that the industry is still young, and just the management of those devices is a huge problem. Oculus has an enterprise, or says they have an enterprise platform, but it's not officially rolled out yet. So it's very, very difficult to manage those headsets and get updates, and it's definitely a struggle. And to be frank, you go into some companies and you tell them that you want to deploy a Facebook headset to their staff or their patients, and they're like, "Fuck no, I'm not doing Facebook." So we're working with Pico, which, you know, has a Quest alternate, and it's not bad. It's close, and I think that the other competitors are going to be coming soon. And Pico is, you know, conveniently 100% enterprise focused. They have kiosk mode and mobile management systems kind of inherently as part of their system, but they also have some tech challenges that Quest is just figured out.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Oculus or Facebook just announced that if you buy a Quest now and within 2 years, you have no choice. You have to log on with your Facebook account. So if you don't have Facebook, you can't even use a Quest, which I suspect that they may change that at some point, but at least for the commercial version, I'm not sure about their kiosk mode and the enterprise mode. I assume that you won't have to be Facebook for that.
That would,
Yeah,
that would be silly.
I would doubt it.
Hey, DJ, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Glimpse Group, do you work as all your startups and groups specifically there in the New York City area, or do you work with groups outside the area?
So our business model from day one was to get 10 startups in New York, but then expand geographically with hubs outside of New York City.
Mhm.
Now that COVID has happened, the entire workforce is still remote. And the whole idea of staying local within New York City doesn't make as much sense anymore. So we do miss the having developers sit next to each other. There's no doubt that there's pros. There was a life in that office that was alive, and we definitely miss that. We try and stay as connected as possible. I think in the immediate productivity of developer, we're probably more productive now. You know, most developers, you know, even when they were in the office, they would be sitting next to their person, they'd be slacking with them instead of actually turning around and talking to them. So from a productivity point of view, and developers are unique individuals that I think are maybe they're better suited to be sitting in their home environment and plugging away when they through all hours of the night, whatever it is. We feel that productivity is up, but there is this lack of somebody said in the office, accidental innovation. You know, somebody overhears a conversation and something good happens because of it. And then there's also a lack of, you know, the investor or the potential client comes into this office where there's 50 developers typing away. You know, that was a very impressive thing, and everyone there wanted to be there, and people felt it. Like it was a great place. So we're trying to replicate that as best as we can through virtual means, but we haven't found the magic bullet yet for that.
Got another question from the audience out there. Somebody else?
Yeah, I'm not done.
You're still going?
Yeah. You real quick. Yeah, I had a escape rooms and virtual reality arcade here in downtown Salisbury. All of that went away.
Yeah.
And so I've actually converted I have a 36-foot RV. I've gone the route of Ready Player One.
Nice.
My RV into a mobile studio. But the one other question I had, let's say a small startup or a small company had a product that was practically done but was just having issues with getting out the door, getting exposure, getting out there, and was looking for a way to partner with an entity such as Glimpse Group.
Send me a deck. Yeah, we're constantly on the lookout. So yeah, we're always looking. Definitely financially, we took a hit as part of COVID, so we're not quite as in a position as we were before. And we want to remain focused, but especially if it's complementary to something we're doing, or if it's in a vertical that we're excited about, we're constantly exploring.
Yeah. Well, COVID kind of hit that product that as well. We developed an active shooter response training for educators.
Oh, cool.
And we
awesome.
We had some school systems interested. We were waiting for Oculus Enterprise and all of that. And of course, all the schools are closed and all that. But I mean, at some point, things are going to rev back up again, and we'll blow off the dust on that. And hopefully Oculus will have their enterprise figured out. And so we were just trying to figure out some avenues with that as far as gaining a larger breadth of exposure and stuff like that.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds sounds legit and a good use case. And when things get back together with schools, definitely possible.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we found with it is teachers, when they go through training for active shooter, it's in an auditorium and some guy giving a PowerPoint, and they're on their phones trying to figure out where they're all going to meet for lunch. In virtual reality, they actually have to do everything, virtual school, the whole bit, and therefore their focus is totally in, you know, what's going on. And that's one area you would certainly like somebody to be able to focus on.
Yeah, take a look. There's a New York City startup called Street Smarts,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually do for police departments and the military, shooting drills and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think their first demo was on domestic violence, but guy's name is Oliver. Good company, good folks.
Yep. Okay.
I've seen that.
Let me get John was going to ask a question, if you would.
Sure. Hi. Great presentations. Really exciting stuff that you've been presenting, DJ.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on a ton of different topics today. I mean, you kind of went through pretty much everything. Of all of what we've talked about, what are you most excited about? And then I have a follow-up to that after.
Ooh, what am I most excited about? I'm excited that the hardware is improving. I honestly, that was the first driver, and I'm stoked to see what Facebook comes out with the next, whatever the Quest is. I'm excited that people can really see VR for the first time for $400, and that has been really a huge challenge for me for 7 years up until the Quest came out. So I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Great. Yeah, and then just a follow-up to that, other than obviously gaming, in a post-COVID era, what is the most applicable area of like the theater, social media gathering, the coaching that we touched on, some stuff that you had what's the most applicable area other than obviously gaming in a post-COVID era you think this would have the most effect or biggest effect?
Yeah, I guess it depends on which sector you're talking about, but I think on the enterprise side, the training and education thing is going to be the biggest. That's like the lowest hanging fruit. That's the easiest sell. That's the biggest benefit. So I think on the VR side of things, on the AR side of things, I think the marketing side will be a big driver moving forward. Not considering the
thank you.
and then maybe the adult business.
Actually,
we'll leave that for Kevin.
I'll add on the AR side, interactive, like if somebody helping you, like plumbing or electricity or any kind of projects you have, somebody assisting you, like medical even, you know, with doctors helping other doctors, and they can see in front of them what's going on. And the AR simply because you can see the actual world and do stuff on top of it. But
yeah, we actually are launching our first project in that vein with a client where the user who just purchased the product can open up their camera and the service tech can annotate on it in augmented reality.
Yeah, so I think that's a low-hanging fruit. That's probably even good today, even with the $3,000 headsets. And for those of you that have seen it or not, the limited field of view is one of the problems with the AR headsets. You just can't see very much. It's only about, I don't know, I can't remember the percentage, but it's only about that much.
It's like a postcard.
Yeah.
At this distance.
Yeah, so that's one of the difficulties of AR technology-wise. In 10 years, it'll be almost your whole field of view and out at a distance as well. So there's a lot more we can talk about for that. I don't want to take up much more of your time. Anybody have a last question that we can wrap things up with?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks for your presentation. It was great. Thanks. I'm a grad student in computational design at the UNCC. Last semester, I have a course, a design course on AR that made me super interested in AR, and now I want to pursue my PhDs and my career in AR or VR. So my question is, what are your suggestions for the person that is in the start point? So, yeah, thank you. If you could answer me, thanks.
Sure. So get your pencil and paper. I'll give you the list.
Thank you.
So one, do these types of events, right? Build yourself a community. If you can even start a community like I did, that's even better. But get yourself involved with other folks that are in the space. Get on LinkedIn, link up with thought leaders that are in the space. Try and get an internship in the space. And in your free time, create a portfolio, download Unity, go to a YouTube tutorial, do a Spark filter, create content. Even if you ultimately don't want to be a developer, the folks that come to my organization looking for a job, you know, it's great when I see the resume and what classes they took. But the first question I have is, what have you done in the space? Like, let me see what you built. So start fiddling around. And the fortunate thing with AR is Unity's free and it goes on basically any mobile phone that's out there. So there really is no barrier of entry for basic AR stuff.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, DJ. Really appreciate you spending your evening with us. Some of us are now going to go watch a football game for the first time, so maybe we'll change our maybe we're in post-COVID already, maybe soon. I have recorded this. Mostly I missed the very beginning, so I apologize for that. I will try to post it on the Meetup site, as well as I think the slides, if you'll let me.
Yeah,
put that out there. Any last words from you, DJ?
I just thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone's interest in this technology, and keep on experiencing it. I think that's probably the most important thing is just spend time in VR, and the rest will follow.
Well, appreciate it. We'll try to have another Charlotte VR AR meetup in a couple months if we can. And if there's anybody that has a suggestion on what the theme is or a speaker, and I will try to come to DJ's next VR meetup if he's going to have one remotely.
I'm going to do it.
I'd like to actually go in person. That would be fun.
A perfect reason. Once things calm down, you got a special invite.
All right. Excellent. So with that, I appreciate it. And we will end it here.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
See you.
Thanks so much,
Thank
DJ.
you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Pleasure.
That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
Thanks
I
for
got
coming.
a million more questions, but
That's okay. I had a million more questions too. It's like, there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
That's right. And football does call, but
Yeah.
hey, Jordan, how's it going?
Hey, DJ.
Jordan,
Hey, everybody.
you're a little late, Jordan. We're literally just ending like this second.
My apologies. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Great to see you guys. Sorry I'm late, obviously. How was it all?
Great.
I think it went good.
I think it went very well. Smaller
Yeah.
group. I was hoping for a couple others. There was a guy from Microsoft that almost always shows up. I was hoping he would come, Marcus, give his perspective, especially on the HoloLens, and see what's going on there. And he couldn't make it today, I guess. But other than that, it was a nice group today. Like I said, I've told you, DJ, before, our group tends to be people that have been in VR, and nobody raised their hand and said, you know, they have never seen it. I showed Kevin, you know, but did I show you the plank?
No.
Okay.
No, and I saw some medical stuff too. I was telling you about a couple of years ago at a trade show. But so DJ, I'm the theater guy. I've got a theater company, and Stephen and I have had some really interesting discussions about how to include VR, AR in theater and how to make it commercially viable, right? And that's the real trick.
So you want my pitch? I've been pitching this to other theater folks for a while, and I haven't gotten anybody to bite. Here's my pitch: it goes back to the intimate settings.
Yes.
And I know that there's some complexities with union stuff, but I went to a reading, one of my first theater readings, and the show was wonderful. It was charming. I had like a blast. It was like an hour and a half long. And all I could think of was I wanted to record that with my virtual camera, and then create a channel of these readings, like these shows that aren't really shows yet. And I think if you
kind of like a development tool.
Yeah, so it
Right.
could be used for the investors, maybe initially, right? So especially during COVID because they can't go to the readings. But I think that think about if you had the first reading of Hamilton, right, and you kind of keep that in your library, and when this show becomes a big hit, you have this amazing content, and then or maybe as you get up to it, maybe it's a mechanism to you have these super fans of Broadway that maybe they don't live in New York City, but they're able to help weed out upcoming shows by going and sitting and feeling as if they're in this reading.
Interesting, yeah. So that was kind of similar to my idea that I was pitching to Steven, is that so you have like different tiers, right? You sell the in-house ticket at X amount, right?
That's
and
right.
then you sell the VR ticket for Y amount, and but it's like they're sitting in the theater. They put on the headset and they look around. There's audience members. They're seeing the show, the whole experience, that intimacy that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And then you have the third level, which is the
Green room.
YouTube video afterwards.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question is in all this though is I really do think it's a different medium, that it's truly something that and you said it too, GJ. I don't think it's been explored. I don't think somebody has figured out what is the right thing. Because if you take what you do today and try to say, okay, let's make that for VR, it doesn't quite work.
No, I don't think so. Well, number one, there's a stamina thing, like a full 2 acts, hour and a half, 2 hours in VR. Most people, especially non-VR people, they get to about an hour and they're like, get this thing off my freaking head, right? So, a condensed version of the play, a reading or whatever that can fit in a 15 to 20 minute sound, component, a bite-sized chunk. I think that's a little bit more conducive to the medium. There may be in the future adaptations where you take, just like you take a book and you turn it into a movie. I can imagine there could be a Broadway theater show where you turn it into a VR show, but that VR show is ultimately going to be a different type of experience. I don't see a ton of value in putting a camera in front of the theater. Maybe I'm wrong, but feels like it would be missing something.
I like your idea of creating the intimate settings that's somehow connected to the show, like the green room kind of setting, for the super fan person.
But how do you do that? I mean, truly, how do you do that on scale? Because the whole point of like a film is millions of people. Now, the problem with, let's say, a theater is you get a big theater that's still, 3,000 people, 2,000 at the most, whatever the theater, and that's it, each show. So like Hamilton's tickets go for, $1,000 because there's only limited seats. So you want the medium to be able to go to infinite, but how do you create that intimacy? And I think that is the art in it, if somehow you can do both.
Yeah. I think I like the idea of a channel of shows before their shows. And I think that there's Broadway folks that
I think
maybe
so.
that resonates with them. If you go on YouTube, there's The Greatest Showman, the first time the one lady sang the song. There's the reading of Superbad, the show, whatever, where you see them reading it for the first time. Like they're awesome little YouTube moments where you just, you wish you were there at that time to see this thing. And maybe the show before their shows, it's kind of cheap, but then you have that footage, and if lightning strikes, maybe that's when then the real payoff is. So anyway, that's my Broadway pitch. If you end up doing it, just make sure you come to me so that I can help you do it.
Well, I was going to say, definitely agree with you completely, but also burlesque. You got to burlesque.
But my son who was on here is interested more in your porn one, so great. He's ready to go with your company. It's always good to hear as a dad.
Yeah, right.
There are a lot of 360-degree videos out there, but they're really not that great, to be honest.
It's really.
So
it's
you've heard?
actually,
Somebody told you?
All market research.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop recording right now.
there you go.